and today I get to interview the amazing, wonderful, kind and beautiful Yemi Penn. So
Thank you, Jen.
Welcome.
It's not weird. I'm excited because it feels like a safe space, and I'm going to learn more about me and I guess maybe parts of you based on your question. So I'm really excited to be here.
Okay, so your sort of elevator pitch says career by profession, entrepreneur by passion, and transformation mindset coach by mission. So you started out as an engineer.
I did. It's funny. I was meant to start out as a lawyer. So my dad was a lawyer, and there's this thing in our culture where someone carries on from what most typically the man, his profession, his career. And because my brother definitely wasn't going to do it. And then I studied law at A levels, I think, which is the equivalent of HSC in Australia. But I just found it so boring. I said, I just can't keep doing this, just like arguing for different cases. We've all got a story. And then just this idea of creating things came into my mind, and then engineering. And I knew there weren't that many women in there, but I think I've had it in me for a while to do the things that aren't commonly done. So yeah, engineering was the go-to. It took a while, a few failures, a few bumpy roads, but so worth it. I think my engineering degree and industry experience has been pivotal to a lot of the work I do today, funnily enough.
Okay. So was there a moment that took you out of that and into the mindset work and the work around pharma you're doing?
I think it's been a journey because my only book that's currently out, Did You Get the Memo? Because I didn't. It was the fact that I was following the memo. The memo for me in this instance was that I get a good degree, I earn good money, and I just build my life, 2.4 kids, white picket fence. So I guess I had never once thought, obviously when I was at uni or even working, that I would ever go into something else. But I think one day, or it's probably a few days, when I relocated to Australia, there was a monotony in what I was doing because I thought the monotony was in the UK. But then I came to Australia and the monotony was still there, but there was a bit more sunlight. But I just remember thinking something needs to change. And then there was this comfort in me. And that was when I started to think of opening other businesses. But obviously I didn't have the money. And the process in which I went through, the whole transformation process, and I say transformation because I think there's so many different variations of transformation, but the transformation process I went through to go from living the memo of being in a career to creating businesses is what got me into mindset. Because for me, my transformation then and today is all about the shift in my perspective. And so that's the definition I use in all of my work.
So it went from engineering into more of the mindset work.
Yeah, and it went into engineering, then entrepreneurship, because I started opening businesses because I was doing the day job. I was enjoying it, but I was like, I want more.
Yeah.
Because I'd finish work 9 to 5, I'd come home and I'd still be bored. So what I would do is I'd start doing work. And I was like, I don't want to do any more work. I'm paid for 9 to 5. I love my job. I want to do something else. I started to do other little things in the evenings. But then I was using a different part of my brain and I started to love it. So it genuinely was engineer, entrepreneurship, and then it was mindset coaching because I guess I used myself as a guinea pig. I wanted to see what happens when we stretch our mind. And then I went into the mode of, okay, how can I teach others to do the same? Oh, I love that question. I haven't answered that in a while.
So the bit that stood out for me there was, and this is a bit of a personal question, I guess, is that when I hear you kind of like I came home and I wanted to do something else and I'm doing work at home, part of me goes, oh, I wonder what was brewing under there that you were avoiding. Because I've got to be busy all the time. I'm coming home and I'm working and I'm starting other businesses.
You're right. I'm wondering, I've never gone back there, but I do know now that I think I keep busy. Even though I get anywhere from 6 to 9 hours sleep in a day, I do think I do get busy because there is a slight discomfort in having nothing to do. I haven't explored that fully, but I definitely know there is a part of me. I just before we went in lockdown here in Sydney, New South Wales, I was gonna sign myself up for a silent retreat because I really want to explore what it looks like without doing anything or go into my phone. I mean, I go to my phone to remind myself to put a reminder. I mean, there's a part of me that just wants to say, what happens if you don't remind yourself of anything?
Yeah.
So what was probably bubbling there is just not feeling content with what to me probably appeared to be emptiness. And I think there is some healthy, but there was definitely some unhealthy stuff that I needed to look at and probably still need to look at. Yeah,
it's interesting.
Probably still need to look at. I'll be honest with you, I need a silent retreat. I think I'll find out some things that I just haven't looked at.
Yeah. There's some amazing silent retreats around. I have a great story from a silent retreat. It's a bit off topic, so we'll stay with you. So
no, I want to know.
Tell me about the book. So did the book come next?
So when did the book come for me?
Because books I see a bit like angels, it's kind of like if you read Elizabeth Gilbert's work around big magic, and she talks about them coming, like a book kind of lands like a little angel, and it's if you put your hand up and catch it, then it can come through, and sometimes you just kind of touch it, and if you don't really bring it through, then it will fly off and go to someone else. So it's always like a little bit of magic that and that's the one that you grab and put in.
So if that's the case, then I think my book as an angel had come to me earlier, but I took a bit too longer. I'm sure everything happened as it was meant to be in lessons, but I didn't feel worthy to write a book. I didn't feel worthy to write a book until after I published it and it'd been out for about a year, because for me, the story I told myself is who wants to read your story?
Yeah.
Like, who wants to read your story? That's what I told myself. And why is anyone going to want to listen to someone who's broken, someone who didn't follow the memo? But the only reason why I did write it is because I figured I was successful following the opening of my gym in London. Then I thought, okay, now people are going to want to listen. I've now found out since that we all have a book in us, and the book reaches the people who it's meant to reach.
Totally.
So everything else was really,
and for people who've got exactly this, or for people who've got a different memo, but they're still working to their own kind of whatever they were given their memo, and that inspiration. Yeah, it's about inspiring, and we inspire people through stories, don't we?
We do. And I'm not sure we've got enough spaces. I think that's definitely one of the things that I want to do. And, whether it's with my partner or a charity we've just raised, it's how can we create the spaces for people to tell stories? And I know, when you're at work or in a meeting or a gathering, and there's always someone who tells a story that just goes on forever. You don't want that to happen. You want everybody to have a chance, whether it's in this particular meeting or another. But there's so much power in stories. And if we can ask questions that are, compassionate but inquiry-based, I think we would learn so much more. I think we would save years, decades on life experiences just by hearing other people's stories. So now I'm with you.
So what's the core, if you're going to read the book, what's sort of the takeaway core message from the book?
It's funny because I definitely didn't, I don't even think I proofread it. I had other people proofread it because I thought if I proofread this, I'm not putting it out there. But what I can remember, the reason behind it, my chapters were about the pillars of life. I wanted to talk about the stuff that I actually think should be subjects in life. And if it's not in primary, it should be in secondary, but ideally the whole way through. So I think I started off with childhood. I think a lot of us probably have some element of childhood trauma, and that could be losing a pet. It could be an argument one had with a parent or something. Yeah. So I put that in there. I put education, I put career, I put money, all different names. So my money chapter isn't just called money, it's called the genetics of money, acknowledging how our DNA print and our history affects it. So I really got creative with the titles because of the narrative. So it's effectively an invitation to say, everybody, because I give little exercises at the end of each chapter.
Yeah.
Look, when you go back and explore your life in terms of education, career, and I think I acknowledge those who didn't go down the educational route of what success looks like for them. It's a question of, did the memo work for you? Did you get the memo? What does it look like if you create your own? And that really is the message. But the real theme between all of it is about transmuting pain to power. Whatever you don't think worked in that particular pillar of life, what story can you recreate to make it work for you now? That's a big part of it.
Yeah, transmuting pain to power, which steps us nicely into, how did you get to America to do your TEDx in the middle of COVID? How did you do that? I mean, that must have taken some mindset training.
Yeah, I think I'm due to do another Houdini trick. That did. That, I think a lot of people want to actually know how I did that. People don't actually realize that so far I've managed to get 3 of us out, including my kids. But specific to the TEDx, it was bending reality. And when I mean bending reality, I literally created a second version of reality in my mind. My partner and I had a number of disagreements because I constantly was telling him off for ruining this new reality I was creating. And what I mean by that was, I had told myself that I'd be able to get out of the country safely, not putting other people at risk, and get back into the country safely without putting anyone at risk and doing my talk. So I'm very, very clear on stating what I want, but why I want it. And because my TED talk was going to be on trauma, and really it was a case of trying to just like gently, when you're trying to gently wake someone up, but you don't want to scare them. I knew I needed to do that because it needs to be the gentle wake up to humanity. And the only way I was going to get their attention was by some of the pain that they were going through. So the importance of speaking, and especially on that stage in Ocala, Florida, was really high. So my daily work of creating a reality that saw me leave the country, do the TED talk and come back safely I was focused. So when my partner would tell me about the amount of cases that were going up, how the borders were being shut, how people couldn't come in and leave, I thanked him genuinely. I said, look, babe, I thank you. I think I know what you're doing, but it's not how I operate. I am a realist to a certain extent, but I'm also a dreamer. My dreaming abilities that I left behind as a 7, 8, 9, 10-year-old, I've picked it up full steam. And I use that every sense of the word. And I've done it again. My daughter's in the UK. We got an exemption that way, but the importance was for her to go be with extended family in the village. I used the same thing. Speaking about trauma on the TED stage was important. And so that reality I created, it was so real. And then I stepped into it.
Amazing.
That must just sound like hocus pocus to whoever's listening, but it's the truth.
Yeah, that is what mindset is, right? That is what mindset is. And I love the way that you used. I created an alternate reality, and I just stepped over onto the other side. Yeah, and then when I do that work, it's exactly the same. It's like it's that not having any doubt that it's going to happen, just kind of having really strong. And I love how you said, I anchored safety for everybody. Yes. And no better time to go and talk about trauma than in the middle of COVID, when everyone all their trauma was being triggered, because so much of trauma is based on lack of safety, not feeling safe. What was it like? Yeah.
Lack of safety. I'd never put that in. Trauma is based on lack of safety. Yeah. Wow.
And especially embodied felt safety. So, yeah. So what was it like to step out on the stage to do it after prepping and...
Well, my coach was amazing. She was so amazing. I just need to give her props. One thing that stayed with me, which really helped when I went on the stage, was while I wrote my script, I then had to memorize it. And I'm really one of those, I like to be a natural speaker. I can prepare for stuff, make sure I've got some key points. But I remember doing my speech, and at the end saying, thank you. And she said to me, no, girl. You don't need to say thank you. We are going to be thanking you for sharing your message. And even though I tend to say thank you because I'm a big believer in gratitude, and there was an element of humility, in her just sharing that said to me that I am worthy to be on a stage and to speak. Because I think she almost felt like, and she said to me that when I finish what I'm saying, to not just rush off the stage, to just pause for a few seconds. And for me, that was to just say, I am here. Because remember, my particular story, especially around trauma, was about not being seen and not being heard. So getting on that stage was actually part of my healing journey. Understandably,
so
there were nerves. Nerves, will I forget? But because this is mission-led, it didn't matter if I forgot. It didn't matter if I didn't, emphasize a certain point, because vibrationally, the message was going to be there. But going out on stage, it was scary. One thing my coach also said is, remember that TED Talks are timeless. So you really don't want to put any time construct over it. And also the fact that when people watch and listen, they could be anywhere in the world. They could be on their phone by mountains. They could be at home. They can be in, an exhibition or an event listening to it. So I had that all in mind, but I think about 30 seconds in, I just forgot everything and I just delivered. But at the end, I stood for about 3.5 seconds before I left. And that was a big deal because I was saying, I am here, I'm worthy, and I just want to share this message. It was awesome.
Yeah, I feel that. I feel that in that pause.
Yeah.
And it's almost like a integration, as I feel it.
It is.
Integration of completion and presence. Yeah, it's powerful.
I need more pauses. I think that's what a silent retreat will do for me. Pauses.
No, you're right. And so much of therapy actually is about sort of pausing and slowing everything down, because one of the things that trauma does is one of the coping mechanisms we get is that kind of speeding up, have everything go so fast so we don't have to feel, we don't have to see, we don't have to, it's
Yes.
like it almost speeds everything up. So what was it that pulled you into the trauma space? Because let's face it, it's pretty different from engineering. From engineering, logical, matter of fact, to very elusive, emotional. It's in a completely different realm. It's almost like they're two different worlds, aren't they? Yeah.
Another great question that I just haven't answered enough, and you asking that, whenever I'm on LinkedIn, my LinkedIn profile has always been about engineering, or probably been about nothing. But most people know me via LinkedIn as an engineering professional. And when I start posting other stuff, especially around trauma, I can only imagine how confused they are. And I think most people probably think I'm actually so either traumatized or distressed that I can't stop talking about. That's what I think. So this is the story I tell myself. But now I just want to make it clear what really happened. So in writing my book, that was really, the best way I can describe it, so imagine you've got a piece of thread and you're usually just looking for that first part to undo so you can thread the needle. Writing the book was me finding the part, that thread, and this is of my life now. So that whole thread was my life. Yeah. And when I did that, there's obviously a chapter in there where I talk about trauma. For everybody that read the book or came to my book launch, that was a chapter they resonated with. They would never go into detail, but it was almost like they looked at me, their spirit and their soul said, I see you. And I mentioned, I see you back. There was something there. Now, my business manager, who's also a very good friend, Varusha, she said to me when I was about to start on a documentary, I know that was it. I wanted to do an equivalent of a red table talk, but around, did you get the memo? Because I really wanted everybody to just talk about whether they really sign up to this. Now, I knew in my heart of hearts that even though I believe in that concept, it was the superficial element of really what I think I'm meant to do in the world. But I couldn't allow myself to talk about trauma because everybody would then think I was just saying, oh, look at me, woe is me, look at me, I'm the victim, feel sorry for me. This is the story I was telling myself. And Varusha said, I think you need to do something on trauma. And I was like, oh, no, not necessary. The world has enough. The Me Too movement came up. They got shut down. I don't want to do it. and the resistance was high. And I then had a reading because I started to go into alternate methods of just communication, and readings are one of them. And the lady who did the reading said, okay, you've got a big team because your ancestors are right behind me. And I felt something, like I have felt either sometimes I just get an image of someone from the past, or I get a feeling.
Yeah.
And in that particular reading, which was my birthday last year, 2020, it felt like it was time. But the reason why I decided, even though I knew I was meant to do something in trauma, was because I now knew I had a team. I didn't want to do it alone. And if I'm going to be honest with you, I don't want to do a lot of things alone, even though I can be very much of a loner when it comes to business and stuff. But I just didn't want to do it alone. And the minute that came up, and I still don't have all the answers, but what I know for sure is that trauma plays a role in so many things. I just take myself back to being in engineering, and I'm in a meeting and you have this, man or woman slam the table because they're really angry that something hasn't gone the way. That there is some form of trauma response in that. Now, I would have never even had the vocabulary, understanding, awareness. I would have just labeled that person as an angry, idiotic, blah, 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 all the name calling. But the work on trauma, which really called me in, is saying, actually, you're doing trauma stuff and you did engineering stuff because you need to be part of the bridge to understand what it is. And that's just one field. So this was a calling. I've worked on and continue to work on the shame element because there was a big shame element for me.
Yeah.
And I'm comfortable. I'm ready. I think I wake up most days telling my team, okay, I'm ready. Make this easy for me because this ain't an easy topic. So make it easy. But that's how the transition happened.
I just feel your bravery coming through as you speak there.
When people say that, what do they mean? Well, when I hear that, when I hear courage, bravery, it's like someone going out to war, but they've only got like a little penknife while everybody else has got machetes.
It's like,
what does bravery mean?
For me, it's like when you stood on the stage for the 3.5 seconds after the talk. Because to stand, it's like a standing in full self with the bits that maybe aren't fully processed and aren't perfect. Because there's this, we want to present our perfect self or the best self, or most of the time we don't want to present our messy self, right? So there's a courage and a vulnerability, it's very Brené Brown, courage and vulnerability when we come forward and talk about openly trauma that is deep and personal and owie. And maybe not completely integrated, because I don't know, like some trauma, we can work with it and integrate it, and then still keep going around that cycle of meeting another piece of it that hasn't been resolved and working through it again. Yeah, that's interesting. Does trauma ever get fully resolved? I think bits do, and I think some bits keep going around in a cycle. Yeah.
I definitely think it is going to be a journey. I had a disagreement with one of my sisters recently, and I was definitely triggered. The shame thing, which I think the shame thing really is actually affiliated with communities that are close to us, might not always be immediate family, but sometimes communities. And she said something. She said, how can you not know this with all the work you do in trauma? And it was the first time that I guess words were put to it. Why is this expectation that everything is solved here and now? Maya Angelou said it. We keep learning till the day we die. How do we know, whether an incident, especially trauma, whether it happened 5, 10, 2 days ago, we sometimes don't know what the triggers are till they happen. So to expect healing to be complete in a certain time, I think is unrealistic.
And that concept stops people speaking as well.
Yes.
Because it's like, if I can't speak about it without crying, if I can't speak about it without being angry, then I can't speak until I can speak in those ways, when they are all such normal trauma responses. You
Yes.
know, that tears might come up at any time, that anger could come up at any time. Yeah, that's an interesting thing, isn't it? That kind of like
Yeah.
being perfect, or the way it's presented, or speaking when you're activated, but about things that are traumatic that so many other people resonate with. So many other people.
Mm.
And so then there's that thing of, okay, well, then we're burying
Yes.
all of that, and we're keeping quiet. And then it can be tricky to get the resolution we need.
Yes.
Because sometimes I think that resolution is like a group resolution.
But I think, I mean, as I mentioned earlier, so I had a webinar today, which, you know, it was what I'm calling the taboo sandwich. We spoke about, you know, sex after sexual trauma, but really was a focus on intimacy. And there were a lot of comments on, you know, shame and keeping quiet keeps people compliant, or it just doesn't ruffle the feathers. I mean, I'm interested what you think, especially in the work you do. Why would people keep quiet? Because I think my confidence has grown, my bravery, my courageousness has grown. You know, there were times, you know, if I'm posting on my Facebook page that I'm about to do a webinar on sex after sexual trauma, believe me when I just hope that every family member of mine's Facebook has gone down so they don't see it. Like, you know, I want to be really honest. I feel it. And not because I think they're going, you know, my family have been very supportive. I've been open with them on what I'm doing. I've been very open saying this is going to be uncomfortable. But I've got more fearless. But, you know, I probably don't know where that line is, where someone's just going to think, yeah, we don't want to hear about trauma anymore. We don't want to hear it. Like, why is that why people keep quiet?
Oh. When you say those words, people don't want to hear about trauma, I just almost feel all these voices just going, we do want to hear about it. We do. We want to hear about it. We want to hear from people's personal experiences. I think we've got to bring it out of the darkness and really allow people to start to have a voice about it, and to start to normalize it, because it's so prevalent. Now, the reason why you were asking about, why do you think people stay quiet for so long? And this is coming up with what's happening in New York, where they've been allowing retrospective sexual abuse cases to come forward. And a lot of questions have been asked about, well, why do people stay quiet for so long? You know, some of these people have got, you know, 14, 15 different cases against them. So why have people waited so long? And this is just my feeling, and I'd, you know, so love to hear from different people about this. And please feel free to comment in the comments section under the video. When we've had a trauma and we think about it, the sort of bits of emotion and the felt sensations can be so overwhelming that it's like, how do you even know where to start? You know, I remember, you know, like, it might be that you've had something terrible happen to you at university, but you didn't want to be known all through university as the girl who that happened to. And so you don't tell your friends, and you don't tell your parents, and you don't tell anybody about it. And it's because that stuff isn't always handled very well, and that sometimes the victim looks like they brought it on, or they did something, or so there's all that kind of questioning of, what was my role in what happened? And it is so incredibly complex, I think. And that's my sense, is that just even touching it, especially when it's fresh, it's like a hot fire, and even touching it, it's like, and there's no integration at all. So I think it just can be totally overwhelming. And that it can take, you know, 10, 15 years for people to even be like, no, it was definitely not my fault. It was definitely not okay. And now I feel strong enough. Only now can I feel strong enough to actually tell somebody who can hear me. That's my sense. What's your sense? Why do you think people don't speak?
Yeah, I was going to share, I guess, my personal one, which some people might relate to. So for me, when, for those who may or may not know my story, so when I think of my trauma, it's child sexual abuse, one of my traumas, but that's definitely a big one that I think has had longer lasting effects. As a child, when I spoke and said, oh, this has happened to me, it doesn't feel like anything was done, because uncle would come back and take advantage of his sexual power again. So for me, there was no point in talking, because nothing's going to be done. And if anything, talking would tend to get him more upset with me and get him more mad. So, once again, my young brain would have never figured out what that cycle loop would be. And so I just kind of buried it. But I think I buried it. But when it was really weird, I would tell certain people I was in relationships with. And now I feel I was doing that because I wanted them to just make me feel safe. But it was also dangerous because some people could take advantage of that. So sometimes we don't speak because we think people might take advantage or they might think less of us. But here's the other thing, where even now in my 30s, this is when I started to realize even more so that I need to do this work, and it will be with me till I think we can eradicate people, well, especially around sexual abuse, people abusing their power over others, because in being quiet, or not even being quiet, in not making a big deal, I don't even know what the words are, but in just suppressing what had happened to me for as long as I did, without kind of making, I guess, my uncle respond. I don't even want to say pay, because I think we all have trauma, and that might be another podcast interview. But in not speaking meant that my uncle in particular would go on to do this. And even today, he might still be doing it. So that stays with me. So sometimes the not speaking is the outfall might come back to bite me. That definitely happened. And, I won't go into all the details now, because I'm still working through this protecting of others. So if I'm going to be really raw and honest, some of it is because of the outfall. I remember telling, just before I got married, to my, one of the preachers or pastors in the church. And, I don't put this in the documentary, but I'll say it here, and it might be in the next documentary. I share with the preacher or pastor saying, look, this has happened. My uncle's back in town. It's triggered me. This is happening. I think he might be doing it again with another child. And the pastor said, I'm going to need to report this. And I just died. Literally the first thing that came into my mind, I actually saw myself being lynched. I saw myself being literally set aflight in physical, whatever kind of flames, for speaking out. Now I'm fully aware, because like I said, I never know what I'm going to say, and I didn't know how much I'd go into this. So we probably definitely, I want to make sure we hold the space for those who watch this, whether now or later. But that was a big reason. Something's changed in me. So when I think of myself as being courageous, I'm saying I'm going to talk because I cannot afford, nor do I want this to happen to another child. I'm going to talk because I'm no longer going to sit in fear. I'm going to talk because if I didn't have the Martin Luther Kings do the marches in peace, I may not be able to even have the job or do the work I do. I don't think everybody has to play that role, but it's really important people know that I'm here. I'm here to talk. I'm going to talk with compassion, but I'm here to talk. And I'm no longer afraid of the outfall. I might be fearful, but I'm definitely not afraid.
Wow.
That was so long-winded, but yes.
Wow. That's a natural landing place, I think. Yeah. And I just feel like the world needs what you have to say.
I think it's time. I'm finding out more and more that there are definitely lots of people who are doing it, but it does need different voices. I think we can all be saying the same thing.
Yes.
But what I say might land differently to where somebody else does. And that's why I applaud people not, if you're feeling that need to speak, don't say, oh, Yemi's doing this or somebody's doing this. No one can hold your voice. No one can hold your vibration. No one can hold your being. So, yeah, I think I do.
Beautiful. It has been so amazing speaking to you and just hearing the whole journey and the integration of all those different parts and personalities. And geez, it's an adventure. Life is an adventure. So
It is
so
indeed. Oh, thank you.
lovely to be here with you and to be doing this project and letting more people hear about trauma and healing trauma and different ways to go about that. So thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you, Jen.